I'm going to open the Board of Directors meeting then, colleagues. So I'll do the welcome and introductions. I've got apologies from Jalabani, Amin Kamaludin and Brian Webster Henderson. Any other apologies?
Yeah, I've got apologies from Sackville this morning as well, Mike.
Any declaration of conflicts of interest, colleagues? No. Okay, minutes of the Board of Directors meeting held on the 1st of May. I have to approve the minutes.
Yeah.
I provided an update on page 21 related to the QAC, the Quality Assurance Committee updates. I provided that by email to Nicola Barnes. If that could be taken
To my correction, Mike.
Yeah. Subject to that, we're happy to accept the minutes. Yeah, great, thank you. Action sheets and matters arising. Company Secretary, please.
Nothing in particular, Mike, that I want to highlight. Board members will note that either items are substantive agenda items or formal minutes were in 3 years report, so nothing I want to highlight.
Colleagues, we're happy to move then into matters for consideration. Item 24, patient story. Perhaps I'll ask you to introduce this. Well, Carla Clark, who's our midwife for safeguarding children. Carla, I'm not going to go around and ask all the board to introduce, but welcome.
Thank you, Chair. So this morning's story is about maternity safeguarding, patient story. This is where a team works in multidisciplinary sort of model to meet the needs of the patient who's in the middle of the issues of safeguarding. Very sad outcome because this patient's child was taken away. But I think what Carla is going to talk to us about this morning just showcases how when people work together and actually make reasonable adjustments for our patients where it is required, it all works out very well for our patients. So without further ado, I introduce Carla Clark to sort of take us through the story. Thank you.
Morning. Hello, my name's Carla Clark. I'm the named midwife for Safeguarding Cross Bay. And thank you for this opportunity to share a patient story. Next slide, please. As you'll see, this case has been anonymised, and we didn't seek direct feedback from this patient because of the complexity of the safeguarding around her and the vulnerability that was identified, and the fact that sadly her and her baby had been separated. So it was very much felt that it wasn't appropriate to seek that direct feedback. However, it was highlighted as a case where there was some really great multidisciplinary team working, as Tabitha's already said. As you can see from the slide, there were some significant vulnerabilities identified for this young person, including a diagnosis of autism. That diagnosis was in adulthood. There was some police call-outs, which were a consequence of some really troubled and challenging family relationships. There was a history of anxiety and panic attacks. And there was also an inpatient admission to a mental health bed, unfortunately. So this case required a significant amount of time, thought and multidisciplinary team working. And these frequent MDT meetings, we know these can be operationally challenging, and they're also difficult to explain to families that we're speaking about what's happening to them. Occasionally they will have some quite personal information discussed, so it was really important that we were explaining why that was happening in her best interests. So as you can see, those vulnerabilities actually increased throughout pregnancy. Sadly, she became homeless at one point due to those strained family relationships. And then the child protection processes took place as well. Section 47 inquiries initially, moving on to a child protection plan, and ultimately an interim care order. Now, that interim care order was granted by a judge based upon evidence that had been provided by the local authority that sadly it wasn't safe enough for baby to go home with mum. It's quite difficult actually to reconcile the fact that mum and baby were separated ultimately with the positive aspects of this case. It feels quite unusual to highlight some great practice in the context of such a difficult and traumatic event for this young person. But I do want to highlight that throughout this patient's birth journey, professionals around her demonstrated a really deep commitment to her immediate safety and her long-term well-being, and provided care in a really trauma-informed way. Next slide, please. I've mentioned already the importance of multidisciplinary teamwork, and you'll see from this slide there were many different teams involved in providing care for this young person. Even within those teams there were various professionals, so we had different types of specialist midwives, we had the theatre teams, we had colleagues from housing, different professionals within the safeguarding team, and that again is a testament to how well we work together within this process. It comes with challenges working with various different professionals. We've got competing needs, we've got competing issues with time and resources, but it was really important that we worked together and never lost the patient within this. Next slide, please. So some of the challenges we and the family faced, as you will see there, presenting behaviour. There was a period where this young person's presenting behaviour was rather challenging, and that was within the context of a mental health crisis. That's not what we would normally find on a maternity ward, particularly a postnatal ward where there are new mums and babies and families there. Senior leadership within maternity and safeguarding had to consider the well-being and safety of the patient, but also other service users. So this required a really robust overview of the situation and swift action to try and minimise any negative impact. At the point where the patient was deemed homeless, the local and national challenges around appropriate emergency housing also meant that the team around this patient had to advocate for her and to be housed appropriately in the context of her vulnerabilities. Now, ultimately, the resolution was a bed and breakfast in the short term, which was far from ideal, but she was very much supported around that. Her autism diagnosis was later in life, so that meant that she hadn't really had the time to explore what that meant to her, what her triggers were, what her coping mechanisms might have been. So that also posed a challenge for the young person and for the people caring for her. The operational impact around the time and the resources need to make these adjustments, and ultimately, there was a requirement for 24-hour supervision of this young person's care of her own child. Now, morally, that is a challenge. That's difficult for her to accept, that the local authority and the judge had deemed that 24-hour supervision was required. But that also posed a challenge for the teams as well, who are caring for potentially, 23 other mums, 23 other people. So whilst the local authority do their best to provide an external professional to do that supervision, often the nature of birth, babies arrive when they want to, will mean there's a bit of a lag time. So again, maternity services find themselves providing that supervision at times in the absence of anyone else. And they made, once there was an external person within the room, maternity services made every possible effort to minimise the negative impact of having an unknown adult in a room immediately following the baby's birth. So that was a significant challenge as well. Next slide, please. So things to be proud of, the adjustments we made, the successes we found. This patient built a secure and positive relationship with a number of professionals who were caring for and supporting her. And it's very clear that we were all working together for the best outcomes for mum and baby. A Mental Health Act assessment is challenging at any point. but within the maternity setting, it seems very incongruous with what we would consider usual routine care, and that was very much approached with kindness and respect throughout. And once this young person regained capacity, she did voice that she felt safe and looked after and did not want to leave the maternity unit afterwards. Additionally, theatre colleagues were really creative about the reasonable adjustments they were willing to make and excited to make for this patient. For example, light was a trigger for this young person. So a spotlight spinal was agreed upon should it be needed. Photographs, if we can just move on to the next slide, please. Thank you. Photographs of a patient journey to theatre. So it wasn't anticipated that this young person would end up in theatre for any reason, but it's always a possibility in labour. So to ensure she felt well prepared for a physical journey to theatre, we were provided with various photographs step by step by the theatre teams. The theatre suggested that because lights were an issue, we located some post-cataract surgery glasses to see if that could minimise the impact of the lights of theatre, and higher drapes and things like that to try and even just prepare for the possibility of a theatre experience. As you'll see, there's a number of other adjustments and person-centred approaches we took there, including easy read materials and one-to-one parent craft. And it was very clear that everyone was very compassionate with the person's needs at the centre of what we were doing. Confidentiality was absolutely key. If we could go to the next slide, please. That's us done. So confidentiality was absolutely key. So one of the things that was really important was ensuring she could access virtual court in a private area where she felt like she was safe, because obviously that decision was going to be one of the biggest ones in her life, unfortunately, and a really quite traumatic event. So she was facilitated to access virtual court in a private room. She was supported in doing this both practically and emotionally. She had one-to-one care on the day of separation from a midwife and an adult social worker, and the adult social worker went on to describe how impressed she was with UHMB's commitment to individualised care and truly trauma-informed care. And I'd just like to end on the fact that this mum received a Hope box. Hope stands on for Hold On, Pain Eases, and they are boxes designed by lived experience users who've been through separation by the local authority, and they've designed these boxes as a form of connection. Mum gets a box, baby gets a box. They've got memory making activities. They're used and exchanged. Items within them are exchanged at family contact times in the future. And that's something that is open to all families who are at risk of separation within UHMB. And we've now been funded by the ICB for that. Thank you very much for your time. Very happy to answer some questions.
Colleagues.
We did meet in the other room, didn't we? I just wondered, I mean, my background is mental health and substance misuse, and I'm just listening and very impressed by that, because years ago when I worked in it wasn't always my experience with the substance misuse, mum. So very impressed with the obviously massive strides forward. But I just know how stressful those situations can be, and I just wondered about the support for your staff that are involved in that, because it's just it's traumatic for everybody that's in that MVT, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. And what actually happened was we offered debriefs to the staff who were directly involved, but also the wider staff groups as well. Throughout the case, we had regular safeguarding supervision, which I believe allowed us to feel comfortable and confident that we were making the right decisions in the right way to support her. So there was a safeguarding supervision element, but there was also a sort of restorative debrief afterwards as well, because it was a challenging case.
Thanks, Carla. Thank you.
Thanks, Carla, and thank you for bringing the story to the board's attention. I've heard hundreds of stories actually, either through board or other fora. That's one of the only ones where I was just, as we were talking, looking around the board wall. So a vision of a great place to be cared for, purpose about compassionate care with the best possible outcomes. They don't have to all be positive in output, but the best possible outcome. Ambitious, caring, compassionate, working with partners. So this is one of the stories that I've heard that actually it's writ large that everything we're trying to do as an organisation has been forward in that story. So thank you for that. Shirley Ann picked one of the questions I had around support for colleagues. The other is, I'd love that every story we hear is able to be articulated like that and hits every one of our objectives and our way of working, our values, but they don't always. So how confident would we be that if those circumstances presented again with the same kind of patient, that they'd have the same kind of experience? Or was it because of certain colleagues were on a shift or allocated to this case, or certain relationships? Would we be confident that that could be replicable every time that circumstance presents itself?
I think a lot of the positives, and this is my opinion, but I think a lot of the positives around this case were driven by leadership. So one of the midwives that spent an awful lot of time on the ward with that patient was the matron for the ward. So she was leading by example. Her colleagues within her staffing group were seeing that actually this type of case, this patient deserved prioritisation at that time. Not to the detriment of any other patients, but actually this was a unique situation. So, and I do try and pride myself in leading by example from a safeguarding perspective. So we've used this case within maternity safeguarding training as well as a, you know, an example of really great practice to encourage and empower professionals to use this. And we've learned a lot from it as well within the maternity teams and leadership as well. But I have to say it was very much driven and supported by our leaders in maternity. So I would be confident that it would follow a very similar pattern.
Great response, thank you, particularly using it as learning as a case study. It's fantastic.
Sarah, please.
Thank you. I think first just to follow up on what Aaron said, absolutely the way that you presented that story and told it and brought it to life is really positive despite it being a difficult outcome. So thank you for that. And my question actually very neatly follows on this, which maybe more question would have with colleagues, I'm not sure, which is, so you talked about the learning within maternity services rised, but actually what about our learning for other patients with autism in other parts of the hospital trust?
Yeah, that's a very good question. And I'll start by giving an example. At the moment, we're being asked through CQC about what we do around reasonable adjustments in ED. So stories like this, and people like Carla as matrons need to work with the matrons there and share the learning to make sure that it's across the board. This story was also presented to our NMAP meeting, which is every nurse, AHP, senior leadership. And Carla did a very good job in that meeting of presenting to everybody. So from that NMAP meeting, we cascade across the board. So we will share learning.
Great, thank you.
Karen, please.
Thank you, Carl. I had 3 questions, and 2 of them have already been addressed. The third one was there was just so much complexity for the young person that you described in terms of autism, her own coming to terms with their homelessness, their disturbance in the home, lots of agencies involved, and I was just wondering how much learning you felt there was for all of the members of the team involved in this that wouldn't necessarily apply to a really complex case, that would just really impact their everyday practice and their kind of insights into people's lived experiences outside of a complex context, just day-to-day practice.
I think one of the things that was evident was a deeper understanding of a trauma-informed approach. In that, people come through our services and we don't know what they've experienced previously. They might not have disclosed any, and trauma means different things to different people, as you're aware. But that the bottom line of being asking what's happened to someone as opposed to what's wrong with them. So actually that challenging behaviour, that might be seen in universal cases on a slightly less significant level. It might be disengagement, or it might be being unhappy with a certain element of care. Actually looking at where that's come from rather than focusing on the impact that has on us as a staff group. I think that was quite evident, and through discussions and debriefs, actually the compassion and looking at that's something everyone deserves. So I think for any case, a key around the compassion and thinking about where some behaviours are coming from, whatever that behaviour might be, was key.
Last one from me, Callie. You probably don't know the answer. Sad outcome of maybe being separated, really. Are you optimistic that they'll get together, that the mother will adjust to her diagnosis and then be able to take the child back?
That is what the local authority work towards. The hope boxes are very much focused on that, because this, historically the hope boxes used to be sort of a memory box, if you will, and that was very final, whereas these are a form of connection. It will all depend on mum's ability to engage with the work that needs to be done. So unfortunately, there's a lot of work nationally that needs to be done in services supporting mum after a separation, because a lot of services follow baby.
Tabitha, lead nurse, any last comments?
Just to say thank you to Carla. And
Yeah.
and the director of midwifery was listening in for you. Sorry, I forgot to say she was there.
Carla, thank you. And Annette, we never really thank you either. You come in very quietly, you sit next to colleagues and that, but just want a minute of thanks to you for being there for supporting colleagues all the time. We'll see you again, no doubt. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
Okay, colleagues, we'll move on then. 25, Chair's report. Hopefully you've got it in front of you. Just a few items to bring to your attention. Item 9 said we were hopefully to bring you the outcome of the non-exec director and the associate non-exec director into. Actually, that has been endorsed by the Council of Governors, who haven't met yet. But the panel have made their recommendations to the nominations committee, and they have made their recommendations to the Council of Governors, who will hopefully endorse that decision
This afternoon.
this afternoon. But we're not in a position to give you any further update till the council made their decision. Item 10, Shirley-Ann Wilson, sitting on my right, stepping down from her role as head governor, but will continue as a governor. And stepping down because she's been appointed Deputy Mayor of Ulverston. So on behalf of the board, Shirley-Ann, I'm expressing our deep gratitude, genuine appreciation. This has been a cracking leader of the Council of Governors. Really have been a model leader. So just formally thank you on behalf of the board for all your work in supporting patients, carers of the Trust. Thank you. I know there'll be a Council of Governors, lead Governor's report. So if you don't mind, I'll ask you to respond at that point. Is that okay? Yeah. Governor elections, because Shirley-Ann is the Deputy Mayor of Ulverston, we have had an election, and we can tell you the result on item 13, that Susie Heyman will take on the role of the head governor on the 4th of July, which is tomorrow. So Shirley-Ann will continue today to the Council of Governors as the lead governor. And Jane Kenny, one of our staff governors, will commence as the Deputy Head Governor on the 30th of September when Lorraine Crossing Chase's terms of office come to an end. Lorraine's term as a governor also comes to an end. So we're grateful that Shirley Ann will continue to be a governor on the council. And then lastly, 2 colleagues for the trust have been awarded OBEs. Peter Dyer, many of you will know him, he's a really good colleague, long-standing, and also Professor Brian Webster Henderson, who sent his apologies today. So our congratulations to them. Happy to answer any questions, colleagues. You happy to accept the chair's report? Great. Chief Executive report, then please.
Thanks, Chair. A slightly briefer version this month from me, starting with some of the, I guess, the national feedback. Because of the general election this week, I've heard a very limited updates from national work, national updates as you might expect over this period. Still a strong focus on the core deliverables of the performance finance agenda in the main. I will update further in the session this afternoon, Chair, about an emerging dialogue with the national and regional team around focus on finance and what that might mean for us as trust and our system. More locally within the ICB, again, similar due to no big decisions being taken, we have put forward a digital strategy for the system, which has been well supported by Chief Information Officers, Chief Clinical Information Officers, including Andy Wicks and William here. What I've asked Jane and the team to do now is to bring something to board that and explains what we're doing with our own digital strategy at place that aligns to that system strategy. So look forward to that conversation. We're also in dialogue with the regional team and the local system around supporting the medical apprenticeships programme that featured nationally in the workforce plan. Obviously, Ali, Jane, really closely aligned with the HR director and other colleagues on progressing, I guess, our plans for a cohort in the future. I'm sure we'll update board over the next few months as to how that's progressed and the impact it might have. Really important part of our future workforce planning. So pleased to see that we're leading from the front and start to work with region on what that looks like for a successful programme with local education providers. You'll see on the agenda, we've got an update from the provider collaborative around things like pathology, 1LSC and the clinical configuration work, which we can come to later on the agenda, Chair. And I know we've got some time later this afternoon to talk in a bit more detail around the 1LSC and progression. There's a couple of things just to reflect on in terms of, I guess, more locally. Really strong focus within the trust on a couple of areas that board members will be aware of in their role as chairs of the assurance committees. So we have an ambition around our continuous improvement agenda to continue to take forward the work we did under the recovery support programme, both on governance, assurance and risk, but also core quality improvement and financial sustainability. So unsurprisingly, a lot of the work of the exec team and the leadership teams is to progress that agenda on the annual plan objectives we've agreed. We do have a couple of areas that we're progressing through July. We have a CQC engagement visit later this month that I know the teams are working well on preparing for. This is part of the CQC's new approach to, I guess, inspection and reflection of where trusts are within their own framework. So a slightly different visit because they're going to come out and visit some of our clinical areas, talk to teams, and we're preparing well for that. I've also asked the team with Chris's leadership, supported by Dr. Hawkswell, around our review of where we think we are against our SOF 2 entry criteria, and we're working with region and the ICB against that. I suspect we'll have a couple of reviews through the early summer and autumn before we take a position on where we think we are with an evidence-based progression under that kind of. We've had a good visit again from JAG. That's the body that looks at accreditation for certain clinical diagnostic services. In this instance, it's endoscopy. Colleagues will be aware RLI already accredited for its endoscopy unit. Westmoreland back in March was fully accredited for its unit. Ernest General Hospital, for as long as I've been here, hasn't been an accredited endoscopy unit, and it's largely to do with its operating environment and its infrastructure. The board took the decision in its capital programme to invest in that area, and I'm delighted I was part of the accreditation visit earlier last month. Subject to one small amendment, the recommendation will be accreditation. So at that point, we'll have all 3 units across the piece accredited under JAG, which is fantastic. It does mean we can use the facility at Ernest General in particular for a slightly expanded group of activity, including bowel screening, which is really important. So yeah, great progress from the teams there from medicine and core clinical in particular. And I'll end on two kind of housekeeping updates here, if I may. One is to put on record our thanks as a board. Mike and I have done this personally with Richard Barker, who left us last week and retired as the regional director of the North West. A fantastic career in the NHS through lots of levels of trust leadership, regional leadership, system leadership. Has been a very good supporter of Morecambe Bay, Mike and I in particular, on supporting our journey of improvement, and at times challenging, but a really good colleague, really pragmatic on helping us take forward what we need to achieve. So on record, my personal thanks, and thanks to Richard, who feels often has a well-deserved break. He did threaten to just take 6 months and then see where he was, so we might see Richard back out, I think. And then also just to recognise that our very own Professor Thomas has been given a second tenure of chair of the Provider Collaborative Board, which was ratified with a due process with the Joint Committee. So I'll be delighted to be working alongside Mike and other guys with the Provider Collaborative on next phase to improve. And that's my report.
Thank you. Any questions for the Chief Exec? Tony, please?
Yeah, it's just a comment. Just in Aaron's report, which is much appreciated. At 13 and 14, Aaron references UHMPT celebrating confidence. I just want to amplify. It was a fantastic event. It was really inspirational speakers, good dynamics, great network. And I know you were there, and it just was a great event. Just want to put on thanks to Tabitha and Dan who facilitated. I know there's a wider team, but it was a good event.
There'll be another one, I take it.
No pressure.
Thank you for that.
Thank you, Chair.
Are we happy to accept the Chief Exec's report? Yeah, great, thank you. Then we move on then to, from Shirley Ann, the final head governance report to the board. Any other comments you wish to make?
Well, I'm going to take the report as read, but I just want to, it's a bittersweet day for me today because I didn't expect to be relinquishing lead governor so soon, but I just want to say a very heartfelt and warm thanks to people around this table and outside of here who have been so supportive of encouraging of me on my journey. I mean, I'm the lead governor that 5 minutes after being elected started to get imposter syndrome and thought, oh no, I'm not going to be able to do this. But you know, it's had its challenges. I think it's fair to say it's had its challenges, and I hope one of the things I have done is perhaps built some bridges within the COG, and I hope that we've been able to strengthen the relationship with the NEDs, because when I became a governor 3 years ago, I think my summation of the situation is not a happy experience. And I know that the new governors that are going to be coming in September are going to get a very different experience, because we've got a much better induction programme, we've got a buddy system, we've got pre-COG meetings, and we've got development sessions, and I think all those together combined will make for a much better, more positive experience. I do want to say a special thanks to the chair and Paul for running with my idea of the standards committee, which I feel very strongly about, because when I was a district councillor for SLDC, I sat on the standards committee, and it really does stop situations escalating and becoming unpleasant for everybody. So I look forward to seeing that coming to fruition. But I do hope to stay on as a governor, and I say I do thank you for all your support. It's been wonderful, a wonderful experience. And I'm very humbled that, you know, A, I was elected, and B, that you've all had such belief in me, which is unbelievable, really. So thank you, everybody, one and all. Oh, and I did want to say, I know I will be remembered as the Liz Truss of lead governors because of my very short tenure. But all I'm going to ask, ladies and gentlemen, is that you try and remember me as something slightly more exciting than a lettuce, because my personal feelings are that a lettuce is one of the most boring salad ingredients you can have, and it's one I avoid at all costs. So please, not Shirley Ann Wilson, oh, that lettuce. Just think of something a bit more exciting. So thank you, one and all.
Thank you, Shirley. I don't think anybody will think that. You're right, you took the lead governor's role and you were a governor for a period of real turbulence. And you've led the council to more hopefully settled waters. And I think there are several legacies that will be left in your time. One being the Standards Committee, which I think will be long-standing and embedded in the trust as good practice. I think probably be one of the first in England to do that. I think other trusts will follow it. Really do. The other is, you haven't mentioned it, the call you made for NEDs and governors to have more informal get-together, cups of tea times, just so that we form those relationships, and that will improve working relationships and allow the governors to hold the NEDs to account. And I think then the last thing I'd say, we would also, the lead governor, working with Tony as the SID, that brought in the development sessions for the council. And the development sessions for the council colleagues are internal for the council to work through their own issues themselves in the private area, with Tony as the SID as the sole facilitator.
And Tony has been tremendous.
I think that's really helpful. Thank you both for that. Any questions, Shirley-Ann, or any comments people wish to make? We're happy to accept the head governor's paper. Shirley-Ann, this will be your last board as lead governor. You will be the lead governor till tomorrow morning. Our meetings this afternoon with the joint council of governors and non-exec meeting. So just to remind you of that. But to formally thank you on behalf of the board, and we wish you the absolute best of luck as the deputy mayor of Ulverston. What a time to take on that role following tomorrow's election.
Well, I will just say that I found out it involves a lot of fizz, which is great, and a lot of posh frocks, which is even better.
I'll leave that as okay. Thank you. Colleagues, we're on to quality and safety now then. Item 28, continuous quality improvement strategy update. Chief Nursing Officer, please.
Thank you, Chair. In December 2023, I brought the continuous quality improvement strategy for approval to board. And following the approval, there were a few items that were added in terms of showing how we were going to deliver the continuous quality improvement. So this presentation that I'm going to take you through, and I'll try and just go over it very fast, is in two parts. One of it being me saying what we've done and actually introducing the new improvement and redesign team, celebrating the successes of 23-24, and update on the improvement strategy and the delivery plan, and then share the service redesign methodology that we are applying. Referring back to the chief exec, there was a paragraph, I can't remember what number it was, that talked about ward accreditation. So some of what the objectives within the strategy, we are already running with them and continuing to improve what we do within UHMBT. So this is a 5-year improvement strategy with a 24-25 delivery plan. The context of it is basically that we signed it in principle in December with a caveat of updated version of this document, and that I agreed to return it, and that's exactly what we are doing today. So the strategy now reflects our trust vision to integrate transformation, improvement, and innovation. So we have combined the transformation teams that were initially under Chris Adcock, the Chief Financial Officer, the redesign team, and the CQI improvement team that was under myself. So they are now one team to deliver on the transformation, the improvements, and the innovation. So it directly responds back to the NHS impact assessment, and you all took part within the NHS impact, which we did here, and that feedback has been added onto our strategy in terms of where are our gaps and where do we need to focus and how do we need to improve. So until now, it has been difficult to demonstrate the impact of improvement. So there is need for clear actions and measures of how we will measure the improvements. So basically, the improvement and redesign team will be utilizing the perspectives of health and social care professionals, patients, carers, to consider best ways to achieve quality care. So the feedback from our patients and co-producing transformation with our patients is key to what we do. It's also key for me to have a shared decision-making with our staff. So most of the transformations and improvements that we'll be carrying out will be inclusive of our staff and our patients. So this also includes identifying delays, unnecessary steps, and potential for error so we can remove them. This only comes by communicating, listening, and talking to our staff and patients so we can redesign processes. We had a story about last month, it's 2 months now, I'm getting confused, it's bi-monthly meetings. And it was about end of life, which was in AMU, which is a different place. So this process of improvement and redesign will also look at pathways. And I had a conversation with Sarah where we're sort of looking at end of life pathways and how we can improve them within our service. So I'm just trying to give examples of how impactful our continuous quality improvement strategy will be. The team has got 14 whole-time equivalent staff who will be helping us to do this. So you can imagine a trust of our size, 14 staff. So there is need to train our care groups, all our staff, to be part of the journey to sort of help with the improvements. So the team will implement and drive forward change via the redesign and improvement methodology, providing that leadership, the mentoring and coaching to enable teams to deliver the change that we require. So the areas of focus for 24-25 are delivery of the work streams for transformation and improvement plan, alongside local and national clinical priorities identified through the Transformation Improvement Board outside of the plan. And our Chief Financial Officer will talk about the Transformation Improvement Board and how that is working and supporting this. So our vision is basically to innovate, improve, and redesign. And our mission is to inspire and work collaboratively with our patients and colleagues to deliver sustainable improvement and redesign in an innovative way. And the team will provide expertise and specialist knowledge to transform services for the benefits of our population. And this will be inclusive of looking at population health inequalities, working alongside Chris Chiswell, who is our Health Inequalities Director. So I will stop because there is, within the transformation, improvement, and innovation, there is a large scale of change under transformation, for example, the clinical configuration. Under the improvement team, there is continuous quality improvement service excellence, the GIFT, the surgical hub, and what previously was referred to as Hive and Further Faster. Under the innovation banner, we have new approaches and best practice, e.g. patient engagement portal and HoloLens, which we use. So team members will provide leadership to support within those three sort of banners in terms of how we work. So 24-25 priorities. One was to establish a service redesign team, and we can say tick, we've done that. Blended strategy refresh, we can say tick, we are doing that. Delivery of trust-wide CQI training. This will be an ongoing thing. We have about 300 staff who were trained before my time on the CUSA training. And this has been paused for a bit because we want to scope who's been trained and what do they need to now utilize their training. So CQI focus will be on delivery and impact, connecting with our men from previous cohorts of training, ensure large-scale programs, and redesign methodology will be integrated within all large-scale and small transformation. We have the whole systems flow project. We have the outpatients project, and all these projects, I'm just naming a few, will be supported through these programs. I'm not going to go through the NHS impact improvement patient care together, but if you remember, there are 5 key principles under NHS impact, and we have to align with that vision. So quickly, without going, you received these slides, by the way. They'll be sent through to you. So the first one is we need to build a shared purpose and vision. The second is we need to invest in people and our culture. We need to develop leadership and behaviors that will help us to continuously improve. We need to build improvement capability and capacity within our teams. And then we need to embed into management systems and processes. That's what the NHS impact expects all trusts to adhere to, those 5 principles. So UHMB improvement goals are basically to increase and sustain capacity and capability for us to achieve continuous improvement. And we will do this by supporting with training, mentorship, skills, and reflecting on techniques delivered previous years. The second one is we'll provide and promote CQI expertise to our organizational improvement and service redesign priorities. And we will increase the accessibility to CQI knowledge. We'll embed, sustain a culture of continuous quality improvement. This is really, really, really key to sort of sustain and embed. We will promote shared learning and achievements, and we will increase the use of measurements for improvements. And you will further see that there is improvement steps that will be included, and there's also a case study which has been included in the slides around fundamentals of care programs and what they've done, how we've supported 20 wards alongside 6 steps that are used as tools, as models for improvement. These are all in the slides that you will receive, and they'll give you more detail. Because in terms of time, I'm just going to skim through all of them. So I will now sort of just summarize and say our priorities are clear. Where we want to go is very clear, and we need to just build on that culture of continuous improvement. And thank you. Any questions? I don't know whether Helen Pye has joined and want to add anything before I close, because Helen was going to support this.
Helen, if you want to add anything to what the Chief Nurse has told us?
No, thank you. Unless there's any specific questions around the NHS impact and the 5 stages, so we're just going to go into a little bit more detail if there was any further questions around that, and that it's it demonstrates really through that through our impact assessment that it's a trust-wide opportunity to really embrace continuous quality improvement across all departments, whether that's around the technical capability and capacity to do that, or our culture for improvement, and our leadership for improvement, and how we develop our skills in data-led decision making, and really understand how we measure our quality about the programs that we're doing. So unless there was anything more on that, and apologies for being a little late to join, Tabitha.
Don't worry, Helen.
Fine. Don't worry, Helen.
Let me just check round the room first, but I'll start with has this gone through quality? Anything to escalate?
I'll refer you to Karen because
It was presented a quality, yes, by Hayley.
That's true. So yes, Hayley presented it at Quality Committee last week. It was very, very positively received, and it's a very energetic and engaging presentation from Hayley that was really positive. And I think the key points from the Quality Committee was very much welcoming the joining up of all of the resource and that shared focus, particularly the focus as well on impact So really strengthening the focus on impact and the importance of developing measures so that we can really see that. And the other point the committee made, we didn't want to get too much into semantics, but the committee was really quite clear that this delivery of improvement through transformation and innovation. So it's, although they need to sit alongside one another.
So will quality have regular updates on progress?
Yes.
Yeah, really welcome this work. Tabitha, I know when we agreed the strategy, the lines of inquiry were about turning it into something practical and starting to see some evidence of improvement, which we can start to see whether it's more accreditation or the fundamentals of care. From a board perspective, I think there are two areas that I would want us to consider. One is, as we present our IPR on key areas of trajectory improvement, it'd be good to articulate where we're deploying improvement resource so we can start to see correlation of impact. So we're really crystal clear. So, for example, if the whole system flow is reliant on some of this approach to drive its improvement, we start to see the metrics that we're overseeing around urgent care improve. I'd like to just see that notes in the IPR so we can see the impact. And the other is particularly in the staff survey feedback, where we question gets posed to colleagues about, do you feel able and empowered in your own area of work to suggest and make improvements and need support us to do so? I would expect to see a move to the right and improvement in those areas if we're deploying this kind. So just from a board perspective, there are two other bits of triangulation that I expect to see start to really support.
The board here this morning is not asked to approve or staff to note the content of the report. Any questions to Helen? Helen, you've got your hand up.
Yeah, I just wanted to come just to respond to Aaron around the staff survey. We're also starting to do some employee engagement surveys as part of all of the different work streams to test out how engaged our teams feel when they start with some of the work streams and the work and the improvement work, and then throughout the programme of that checking in every sort of 3 to 6 months. So it'll be interesting, and those are directly linked back through to the staff surveys where we work with our head of culture on that. We want to really test out at that granular level as well about that level of engagement and empowerment for making changes. So hopefully that will triangulate through.
Thank you.
And just one question. I'm not sure if it's for Tabitha or Helen. I just happened to notice when I was walking in this morning a big poster sign that refers to the Hive. And I was just thinking, is there kind of rebranding, relaunching work that sits with this strategy so that the workforce really understand that shift and some of that old branding is replaced?
There is, and we are working to sort of replace some of the material, cost quite a bit. So to sort of do it all at once, we relaunched this strategy in May. So you will start to see things coming through and changing, and the branding at the front also changing. We're in the process of doing it.
Can I just add into that as well? I'm really sorry, it's hard. So the other thing that we've maintained is our 6 steps to improvement, and that's also around the trust, and that's what we'll be maintaining throughout our improvement strategy, whichever methodology, so that staff are still really clear. They're the steps that we're still using. They're absolutely still our direction of travel.
Yeah.
Sarah.
Thank you. A really welcomed update. So thank you, Tabitha and Helen, for that. And I'm sorry I wasn't a quality consultant. I was in Turkey, so I just couldn't be there. It just you both talked about, or Tabitha, I think, talked about relatively constrained resources given the size of the organisation, the size of the challenge in terms of transformation. And so my question is really around whether you're thinking about how you might prioritise programmes where you can put additional effort or expertise, as well as that thing of training up staff to lead their own CQI activity. I guess there are going to be some things that just require quite a lot more focus and resource. And if you've given some thought to how you might prioritise those activities.
The answer is that's exactly what we're doing around prioritising. For example, surgery at the moment, for me, they are a priority. They have got key projects that they're doing. So in terms of support, coaching, mentoring, and we talked yesterday about ophthalmology as an example. So the priority would be that. So we are using that prioritization and actually saying what is key for us to really support care groups to work on.
So for example, I think because that we know that's a risk register.
Yeah, yes.
Around
So that's how we apply
Yeah, okay, thank you.
capacity. Yeah.
So we also have a process that we're just testing out around our resource request that's got the prioritisation that sits within there, that's managed through the Transformation and Improvement Board, to make sure that we are aligned to either the priorities within the improvement plan, and also any clinical or national priorities that come up during the year as well. And like you've just said about the ophthalmology and some of the surgical work. So we're using improvement methodology to test that out as well, to make sure that it's right, and getting feedback from people that are completing. So it's early days for that, but thank you for that question.
On that basis, colleague, we're happy to note the update. Yeah. Helen, thank you. Thanks for answering the questions.
Thank you.
Moving on. Okay, colleagues, so we'll move on to item 29. Still the Chief Nursing Officer, Maternity and Neonatal Update Assurance Report. We've got 3 that you're coming through with us. We also note that they've been considered by the Quality Committee. So I'll just check before you present. Nothing to escalate, is there, Karen?
No, nothing to escalate, not with regard to these.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. On that note, I will pass over to Sue Stansfield, our Director of Midwifery, to present.
Hello again, Sue.
Hello, thank you. So I'll just take all 3 reports as read. The first report, which is the monthly update report, just a couple of things I wanted to highlight. The first one was around the progress of the bereavement suite, which I know we've heard an awful lot about here. There's still the financial challenge, but we know that everybody's absolutely committed to progressing this and looking at starting work in Q3, but this is going to roll on into 25-26 because of the challenge of the size of the work that needs to be done. But that is now progressing, which is really good news. The second thing I just wanted to update from the monthly update report was the vision and strategy launch, which happened last week. And this is going to continue over the coming weeks with staff internally, but also our maternity and neonatal voice partnership lead will be progressing this with service users, and we've made sure that it's available to service users in all areas, but it's also available digitally on the app. And I'm happy to take any questions on that first report.
Okay, thanks, Sue. Okay, colleagues. Please.
Thanks, Sue. Just on the bereavement suite, so I'm a bit like a bad penny on this. I've seen the new plans for it, which were quite difficult in a way to get my head round, because there were no old plans. So it was, because I know walls are changing, so where's everything sitting? But I'm under the impression that the costs have gone up quite considerably. So I was just wondering how that's going to be reconciled with a start date in Q3, considering we're...
Yeah, I'm going to direct that question to our Chief Operating Officer,
Okay.
if that's all right, Sue.
Yeah.
Absolutely, thank you.
Oh, you might say that, Sue. So yeah, so the cost, given the infrastructure of that building, which is particularly difficult, and the supply chain cost, that cost is now more than 3 times the cost that was initially thought to be. So it's a very significant cost, with some very significant technical challenges around asbestos and ventilation. So although bereavement suite sounds like an easy thing to do, then the technical assessment that we've had a second opinion on is that it's not so. And as Chris will allude to later, there's a tentative allocation in this year's capital plan of around £450,000. The remaining significant 6-figure sum will be tentatively allocated to next year's capital plan. So there'll be some works done in Q3, that will go over Q4, and then we'll keep going into Q1 of the following year.
Comfortable with that?
Yes, I mean, it is what it is, isn't it? I guess the other thing is bearing in mind CQC are coming back, and it's one of the issues, isn't it? And it's if we're adhering to compassion, respectful ambition, and open and honest, there's something about how committed as an organisation we are to really get this moving, and what's the impact if we don't, both on patients and on CQC and CNST and all the other.
Yeah, it's a really difficult conversation, this, Alec, because I think we've got in excess of £100 million worth of other things. And I think if they all made their way to the board in the way that this item have, they would all have the same response of why can't we support, why are we not adhering to the values, why are we not? And the simple fact is we don't have enough capital cash to deploy in every area.
Yeah.
Now, Chris is going to present a proposal around the capital plan, and the exec team are working on how do we bring the board closer to a process around risks, mitigations and understanding of what we can and can't commit to and why, which should help, I think, colleagues with a clearer sense of it doesn't matter who you speak to or where you get on a corridor or what visit you have, there's a real clear process and structure here that the board owns. That's not to say that the bereavement suite isn't absolutely a priority and needs to be done, and that's what we're progressing. But I'm just framing to the board that there's a discipline and a professionalism and a risk management approach to deploying very, very small sums of capital, which will be entirely unsatisfactory for lots of us. There will not be a satisfactory conversation there. What I'd want us to do is get to a position that we all own and understand. So then if we're faced with escalations in the year or risks that present or CQC lines of inquiry, we feel confident enough to explain what we're doing and why, and understand where the risk sits and how it's being managed. So there's a piece of work, Chair, that I know the execs are working on. We'll hear something on the capital plan update, but I know Scott in particular wants to run a development session with the board on broader estates of capital investment in the future.
And just to clarify and help the board as well, this first came to the board's attention around experience. We moved into capital and capital spending, but really it's about what experience does a bereaved mother have in RLI? And that's the issue that we need to come back to on the compassion. And that's the question really, that while capital spending, capital planning, you're right, there's probably hundreds of them, and you'd have a little table of how we prioritise and never get anywhere. But the question really is, not forbid, but if there's a bereaved mother or family, will they be seen at RLI in a sense that allows them to grieve with a sense of compassion and quality? That is the question. The original one was that they may be asked to go to Barrow. There was just a sense that seemed a long way away and separating families. So that's the core that we'll be asking really. God forbid, we hope it doesn't happen. But if it does, the family is supported in that site in some way and not asked to go an hour away.
I think they are supported. They are very much supported by the staff, and I know Sue will endorse that. But it's the facility in which they are supported really, which is causing the angst. Trauma.
That's reassuring to know. Yeah, they support.
And the context, well, I will come to the capital programme. Despite all of the constraints, it's on the capital programme. It's profiled to start against a scheme that's still being finalised in Q3. We're spending nearly £500,000 in the current financial year, and we will have to find the remainder next year.
We have to be careful as a board that these nets don't encroach into what is the executive territory here. It's your job really to prioritise and start the work programmes. I guess what the NED's role here is, what assurance are we getting that people using those facilities have an adequate experience, that they're safe and that the quality of care is the best we can give it. That's the assurance that we would see really. And there are probably lots, Chris, you're probably right, probably, but we as NEDs, we don't have that detailed knowledge. So we will take an example and extrapolate that to say, well, is this a single issue, or will it go across in other areas? Is it something that is, serious for the trust, or something that requires a higher focus. That's really the restriction of the role of the NEDs. We get these photographs and then we have to go, right, well, how widespread is it? How deep is it? So you'll have to forgive us if we keep going on about this issue. But just remind us all this is where it came from. Okay. Anything else then? Sue, we've got 3 recommendations here. Do you want me to go through them one by one?
I can do, yes.
Do you want to update us on them in turn? We've got the maternity strategy, the maternity and neonatal safety champions report, and the maternity claim scorecard 2013 to 23, which is related to item 2 anyway.
It is the claim scorecard. I've not particularly got anything to highlight on there. It comes for information as part of the maternity incentive scheme, year 6 and safety action 9. So I'm very happy to take that one as read, unless there's any specific questions from board on the scorecard.
Just for so we have a good record for the minutes. So I'll take then the recommendation 3 that we're asked to receive the scorecard and approve as evidence for safety action 9 for CNST year 6. Colleagues, yeah.
And just to highlight, the Quality Assurance Committee were assured by that.
It is related to recommendation 2. Anything you want to highlight on that one?
No, again, nothing particular to highlight. I suppose the only thing, just for board's information, particularly around maternity and natal safety champions walkabouts, you can see as part of the appendix, we evidence the you said we did and the themes from the listening. We're going to pick this up and try and strengthen this as part of a maternity communication strategy that we'll be working on in coming months. So just to try and assure the board that we are doing some additional work around you said we did and that maternity communication, just to make sure staff are regularly updated.
We're taking that via the quality as an assurance item, Sue. So we're asked to support, recognise the progress against it and the sustainability action plan. Yeah, colleagues happy with that? And then the board of directors asked to note the strategy. Nothing to highlight on that, Sue?
Nothing to highlight, just that we had a really successful launch last week. I think the staff particularly enjoyed it. And as I said, the maternity and neonatal voice partnership lead will be continuing to share this with service users over the coming weeks and months.
Thank you. So we're asked to note it, colleagues. Yeah. Sue, thank you, as always. Just check with the chief nurse. Anything else on this item? Sue, thank you. No doubt we'll see you in the next board report. And if not, we'll see you before then anyway.
Thank you.
Take care. Bye. We'll move on performance and resources then, colleagues. Item 30I, Deputy Chief Exec, the integrated performance dashboard update, please, Chris.
Thank you, Chair. I propose that the exec summary acts as the introduction. I can get straight into the sections.
You coordinate.
So could we go to Tabitha, Chief Nurse, and Matt, CMO update, please, on quality.
Thank you, Chair. So basically from quality and safety, our patient safety incidents, we've had 0 patient safety incidents and we've moved to PSEP. So we won't see the serious incident reporting in future reports. We have patient safety investigations that have been instigated, but that are not going through, that meet the local and the national for PSEP. So we have 3 of those. We've had no never events over the period of reporting, which is a good thing. Going on to our complaints, we've got no complaints now that are exceeding 6 months since December 2023, which is a good thing. However, our complaints are still quite high. We have a total of 175 complaints that are open. And these include 18 revisits within the complaints area. But because we've revised the process, it has helped us to reduce those ones that go over to 6 months and have no responses and everything. But we now need to move into improving our responses, so we reduce the numbers from 175 to a number that is reasonable. So there's a bit of improvement work within the PAWS and complaints team to try and reduce those numbers, working with care groups on how we can speed our responses. In terms of our falls, we have had a reduction, 83 slips and trips and falls since May. And the good thing to note here, we've had 8 consecutive months where we're seeing an overall reduction around slips, trips and falls per 1,000 bed days. And going to Aaron's point around triangulating continuous quality improvement, when I joined the organization, I think there was a focus on fundamentals of care following RSP program. And a lot of work has happened, and you can see this by the reduction and the management of people to support them to have the less falls. So 20 wards went through some improvement work on how they can reduce falls and what they can do with patients to support. And I suppose I'm kind of giving this as evidence. Stories included in the slides that you will all receive later on. So we will continue to focus on our fundamentals of care. Pressure ulcers category 2s as well. We've seen a reduction in category 2. However, the category 3 ones have gone up. And the reason why they have gone up, and we have 6 category 3, is because the guidelines have changed. We didn't record unstageable pressure ulcers, but now the guidelines are asking us to categorize all unstageable pressure ulcers as category 3s. And we have had 0 category 4s. So what we've done as well as a way of improvement, we took a sample over 12 months of pressure ulcers. So we took a 25% of all the pressure ulcers we've had in the last 12 months to see where we were causing harm, avoidable or unavoidable. And out of that 25%, we looked at all the 3 and 4 categories. And there was 1 pressure ulcer per week where we had avoidable harm. Does that make sense? So it didn't allow us to have like an improvement trajectory on that because the numbers are quite low. And that is something I just wanted to stress, that the improvements are there. And we will continue to sort of improve and focus on our patients. Family and friends tests as well are going the right way. And the figures you see today, the 94.33% is excluding ED, because we have challenges within ED to sort of capture friends and family feedback because of how they flow through ED patients and go up. But we are going the right way because we've reported less numbers over and over, but the trajectory now is showing that we're getting a bit more responses. Mixed sex accommodation breaches, we've had 19, and all breaches are relating to delayed transfers from ICU. So on this one, we are working with other trusts across the board to sort of say where they have less cubicles, how are they reducing the breaches, because the patients are waiting to be moved from ICU onto a general ward, and how can we do that effectively so we don't breach. So that number is going down as well, which means we are going the right way. Infection prevention control, we have had 5 cases of C. diff, which were healthcare associated. We've got a new infection prevention control lead, and I'm really, really proud to say our infection control infection prevention control now is accelerating. I'm not saying the staff before were not doing the job, but they've got the leadership that we really required. So we are improving the training, improving talking to people in terms of wearing the right clothes, the right equipment, and hopefully we won't see any, infections getting higher than where we should be. There were no C. diff periods of increased incidence, so that's one good thing to sort of note. But we've had 18 cases where we have had to have GNBSI, which is something that is bacterial infection in our patients, and it contributes to a lot of mortality. But we have not had any mortality related to those 18 patients, just to be very clear with that one. And 3 MSSA cases, but all is under control. Training is up to date in all our care groups. So that's where we are in terms of what we have as our quality indicators. As we progress further with our CQI and measures, the quality bit of it will change, and we'll have some additional measures that actually can showcase everything that sort of says quality, because this dashboard reflects the RSP program. But for us to be able to give assurance around all the quality measures, we are reviewing our quality dashboard. And once it's reviewed, we will be updating board.
We'll take questions after each presenter, if that's all right.
Yeah, I will hand over to Amita for VTE and mortality. She is on.
Oh, it's coming to me actually.
Oh, is it? Oh, so Amita was there.
Amita is here, but
I thought you were on holiday. So
I'm back now.
no problem.
So VTE continues to not meet its standard. We have an ongoing work programme with PMO support, and I know that is reported through quality committees and is scrutinised there. I've been off, so I haven't caught up with what's happened the last 3 weeks, but we have seen some improvements in areas with some sort of dedicated work there. In terms of mortality, our overall mortality again is lower than our peer group trusts. For the last couple of months, we've talked about conduction disorders, which are electrical conduction disorders in the heart, and we don't feel that there are issues around patient care. There appears to be some issues around the documentation that's leading to perhaps the coding not reflecting the true position, and some ongoing work is there. And disappointingly, our fractured epiphyma mortality has worsened. There is some ongoing work which is actually detailed in the mortality papers later on, so I won't go into that here. But that is ongoing, and I believe it's coming back to the next quality committee as a more focused piece of discussion.
Yes, we agreed that because of the circumstances, we'd closely monitor that through a monthly report.
So, I'll bring him in at the end, Carrie, because there'll be other presenters here. We'll have to go again.
Sorry, Chair, just wanted to clarify, because you said you take questions after each presenter, I think. Did you mean after everyone's presented?
Yes, my apologies, colleagues. Sorry, Carrie. I meant that, yeah.
Yes, the people section, chief people officer.
So you'll note that the vacancy rate has increased and it's moved into special cause variation with the cause of concern. It isn't actually a concern, so while statistically it might show that, the reasoning behind that is primarily the inclusion of the approved business case posts that were enacted in the April kind of establishment. So that's the reason for that, and the triangulation for that is that there is no corresponding spike in turnover that would have indicated that there was a cause of concern.
No escalation.
No escalation in respect to that. There are some delays from the vacancy in the time to hire that have primarily been caused by some of the vacancy control scrutiny processes that we have. So we've got an internal panel, and then we have an ICB system-wide panel for posts that meet specific criteria. So that has caused some delays, but still does perform actually positively against the national target. So again, no concerns to raise in particular there.
I think it's important that we just reflect the nursing vacancies. They remain very low. And there has been a reduction in the international recruitment activity, and that's been done as a planned action, really, to make sure that we're trying to manage the availability of positions that are available for our summer qualifying students. So there is a bit of modelling that happens there from Tabitha's team to make sure that we're managing that scenario appropriately. So that's referred to further in the biannual staffing report that we've got on the agenda. Pay control work is really progressing well, with particular focus on the agency reduction plans. I'm sure Chris will cover in the finance section around where we are with the agency ceiling, but we are under the ceiling that has been set for us in the operational planning round. And the core skills work, this is a notification to the board that we will be taking something through people committee as part of the standardisation work that we're doing across Lancashire and South Cumbria. Targets will be moved so they're standardised across every organisation. It's 90% with the adoption of all national content and refresher training periods as well. So there'll be a paper that goes into the people committee that just provides that detail. And from an appraisal perspective, whilst you again can see that reduction in, it does remain in special cause variation of improvement, but you would expect this to happen because we've moved from an April to July cascade period to spreading appraisals out across the course of the year. So there would have been a glut of appraisals that would be expiring in the April to July period. And what we've got now is, instead of it all being front-ended to the start of the financial year, it'd be spread now throughout the course of the year.
Finance section chair. So there is, just to point out, there's an administrative error that we've made in the exec summary. There's an erroneous line in there that says just states 17.5 million against plan of 0.5 million. It doesn't have any place in the report, so it's just a mistake. First thing to mention, other than that, which I think this provides important context for the finance report, is the establishment of the system financial control limits, which, in addition to leading to a reduction in capital resource limits for the year, which I'll return to, Chair, in the capital programme report, has placed an additional financial improvement requirement on the trust for the current financial year of £2.4 million. So that results in a cost improvement target now for the year of 37.3 million. That's just under 7% of expenditure in the 24-25 plan. That therefore reduces the trust plan deficit for the financial year now to 21.9 million, and follows the delivery of £31 million recurrently in the previous year. So a lot of numbers are used there, Chair, but that's just a headline implication of what's changed since we last reported to the board. Finance headlines then, at month one, the report was prepared prior to the resubmission of financial plans that was required to meet the overall system financial control limits. And all the position that we reported therefore included some adjustments to reflect the reprofiling of plans through those submissions as we understood them at the time. So reporting a balanced position against plan reflects a reprofiling savings plans, principally to reflect the revised delivery plan phasing for schemes such as the plan to reduce capacity required for patients who do not meet the medical criteria to reside, and also a revised income profile within surgery, which reflects the extended completion date for the Kendal Theatres redevelopment programme. So the month one report is now reported consistently with those items. Whilst these adjustments did result in a balanced position being reported, clearly reprofiling the savings plans adds financial challenge later on in the financial year. And of course, the key mitigation for this is the enhancements, the development of delivery plans that the time has enabled as a result. So the report itself makes reference to adverse financial performance across 4 of the 6 care groups, specific escalations were established for medicine and surgery care groups, and a range of improvements to the control environment and to the provision of information and corporate support arrangements into those care groups were identified and have been implemented. Both care groups have prepared recovery plans, which will be reflected in the first formal forecast for the financial year, which we'll undertake at the end of the Q1 reporting period. The board will also note that the establishment of the Financial Sustainability and Delivery Group as a subcommittee of the Finance and Performance Committee. In terms of reference for this group, sets out its role and purpose in respect to management and oversight of the work to deliver the Trust financial objectives in year. The oversight of all aspects of this work and the associated management and escalation processes will be reported to each meeting of the Finance and Performance Committee. So it's a big additional focus and enhancement, which is reflective of the scale of the challenge that the organisation is facing. We have continued to our work to enhance our grip and control environment. The latest formal review will be brought to the next Finance and Performance Committee. Savings plans either in development or delivery on the WAVE system now stand at around 25 million. This will be subject to review and validation, and we have further opportunities on our financial improvement roadmap, which currently total £36 million. The latter will, of course, include full year effect schemes, and therefore will continue to do that work and build that total. The roadmap total needs to go higher for us to be able to deliver the current in-year ask. Obviously, with the establishment of that board subcommittee will oversee this work. It's chaired by Tony Oakwin, and will all the exec directors and members and will oversee the progression and implementation of our savings plan, but also critically the work that we're doing to ensure our day-to-day management, the support that goes into the delivery of budgets and the management of budgets and leadership arrangements match the requirements of the plan. Two final points. The trust started the year with a positive cash balance. This will be eroded during quarters 1 and 2. And the cash report will be required as a result, and there's a separate paper on the agenda in this regard. And then just that final note, which is that we will formally review the year and forecast at the end of Q1, and we'll report that through the next one. Thank you. Chair, thank you. And it's an operational performance now, Chief Operating Officer.
Thanks, Chris. Some highlights in this month's report. So it reports April's performance. Urgent care at 77.2% is in second quartile nationally. That's not to underestimate the difference at RLI. So as reported in March, RLI was at the low 50s%. It in this reporting period came up to the high 50s, and in May and June is back up to the low 60s, 62-63%, which is where we want it to be at this point. Page 212 in the back gives some granular detail to the escalation work that we're doing with the team in RLI emergency department. And we've seen meaningful reductions in triage times, waits to be seen, and deflections into the minors treatment unit. And so our monthly meeting with the exec team in the Triumvirate is a positive thing, and we've seen some early positive progress. That progress is likely why for the first time in 3 years we achieved the ambulance handover time of being less than 30 minutes for 80% of patients. Of course, sustaining that is the goal. And then on page 215, you'll see the daily average not meeting criteria to reside number come into special cause improvement for the first time. There's a number of very detailed actions, and it's quite an invigorated and busy space, this, which is positive by and large. You'll see the detail in the pack about halving the number of patients who are not therapy fit. That's a piece of work that Tabitha and I are collaborating on with our therapy teams around clinical decision making, risk appetite and judgment. And we've got some bespoke support in place from the ICB urgent and emergency care team and from our very supportive place director in South Lakes about radically redesigning our discharge processes. And that will be a clinically led piece, and we'll report trajectories to that at the F&P committee meeting after next. In stroke, as you know, we were validated at A for Furness and A for RLI in Q3. In Q4, also pleased to say validated as an A for RLI and an A for FGH. Q1 of this year, which ended on Sunday, the live dashboard says we'd be at a high B for both sites. It takes 8-10 weeks to validate that, so we'll see where that arrives as that, but increasingly ongoing positive news. And we will bring to one of the subcommittees, I forget which we agreed whether it was QUAC or F&P, significant changes in the SNAP ratings. So there's we're now in receipt of the significant implications of the change in the SNAP framework. So we'll brief that through subcommittee and then to board, given the kind of public profile that the SNAP scoring has. For diagnostics, remains very positive, 5th nationally of 115 trusts across England, and comfortably ahead of the target. Cancer, I don't usually dig down into cancer, but just for 30 seconds a day. So we're in the second quartile for all 3 targets. For 28 days, we've been ahead of target for over 2 years, but 5% short of the local stretch target we've taken on across the system. So we're confident of achieving that, but it's important to note that we're ahead of target, we're short of the stretch target, and we're plans in place to achieve that. And 31 days, 0.1% short of the target, and we're confident that the dermatology work we're doing will sustain that target achievement. And encouragingly, in 62 days, we're beyond not only the national target, but also beyond the stretch target that we've taken on for the with and on behalf of the system, which is, I think, a sign of in that space. In elective care, the graph that pleases me most in this pack is the one on page 220, which shows that the Trust RTT for the first time in 21 months is in special cause improvement, and that's something we're very proud of, and a huge accolade to our teams. I really do believe we're starting to meaningfully see the impact of our outpatient transformation programme, and we're in the top quartile in England for RTT. Confident line of sight to 52 weeks. No material impact of the industrial action this week, or last week, sorry, into this week. And we're at our lowest numbers for RTTs in the last 4 years. We've got the 3rd highest rates of patient-initiated follow-up in England, but we've given ourselves a stretch goal of the 11% up to 15%. The board's often rightly curious around our do not attend rates. The nomenclature of that's changed to missed appointments, and so our missed appointment rates have reduced impressively, and you'll see that in the pack. We're now very near our 6.5% target, and indeed keep going when we stretch beyond that. And as I placed previously, we've got a specific focus on missed appointments in those populations most exposed to inequality, and we're driving hard on that work and confident of achieving it. And finally, not only do I think we're seeing the meaningful impact of the outpatient transformation programme in business as usual, I think we're beginning to point to some meaningful improvements in productivity and efficiency. So on this site, for the first time ever, over the last 3 weekends, we've done 4 knee replacements on a list in the theatre. That's the first time we've seen that, and that's some great work we've done in collaboration with PCB. I'd like to a very good local team in surgery. So lots of positives in there, Chair. Thank you.
Chair, that's the end of the IPR, so questions. Thank you.
Harry, start with you.
Yeah, I just wanted to ask about the gram-negative bacteria rates. So just slightly going for 13, I think, last time, and they're 18 this time. So I just wondered if we've done any more of a deep dive into it and the pockets in the trust where it's higher, or is that spread out? And is it related to gallstones, or is it urinary?
Okay, so yeah, there is work that's happening in looking into the whole infection prevention control from our new lead to see if there's specific areas. I don't think I could give you an answer as to whether it's related to gallstones or something else. I'd have to find out that from the infection prevention team. But yeah, there is work happening to try and reduce the number.
Check with Sarah. You coming out this in a second, Marshall?
I know that there is a deep dive ongoing, which has been reported to quality committee previously.
Thank you. That might help get the information to the form.
Yeah, just because it's
gone up
to get through really. And then I just wanted to ask about pressure ulcers and welcome the quality dashboard review. I think that'll help a lot. it's just useful to know, for example, if pressure ulcers, again, are they isolated to particular wards? Is it because we've got more complex patients in our beds? More detail really behind it, and just triangulating it with things like staffing levels in units and what's will be useful in a quality dashboard.
Take that into it. That's very helpful.
Sarah, this has gone through quality committee.
Yeah, thank you. So we're in a bit of a position this month where we've had 2 quality assurance committees, but only 1 board. So I chaired the May quality committee, Karen chaired the June quality committee. So between us, we're covering off different items that have been discussed at different committees. So in my 3A's report from the May committee, you'll see that I did advise around pressure ulcers, and I just wanted to touch on that briefly. So we had quite an in-depth discussion around pressure ulcers at the May committee, because actually they have been on an upward trend since January 2023, and I know that's also noted in the TIB report, a report around exit or entry criteria for SOF 2. So there's been some work around it which has found that the correlation is less about wards and staffing issues and more about the frailty of the patients, which again correlates with what Tabitha reported in the IPR update, which is that very few of them are related to lapses in care. We had a representative from the ICB in the meeting who always attends Quality Assurance Committee, and they're supportive of the work that's being undertaken in the Trust to really understand what's driving pressure ulcers, and also noted that going forward that there will start to be a benchmark around number of pressure ulcers per 1,000 bed days, which will help us be more confident about where we are in terms of quality and safety. So it's absolutely work that's ongoing. It isn't correlating to staffing on wards, and it's much more around frailty, but it is nonetheless against a backdrop of increasing. So I just thought it was useful for me to provide that update at this point.
No, you came to that.
Yeah, thank you.
You've got a question, Sarah?
No, I haven't actually. I was just
It's just a couple of points, and but you may prefer them to come with the 3As. They're in the 3As report. They speak specifically to items that have been raised. Perfect. Thank you.
Thanks. Yeah, and a couple of areas to me. So Tabitha, complaints, it's good to see the 6-month kind of issue being dealt with. We mentioned the 175 and wanting to get to a more sensible number. Just a view of what that sensible number is and how long it might take us to get there.
I think for an organisation our size, it will be good to report complaints around the 50 mark, because currently, when you look at it, medicine are sitting with 90, core clinical are sitting with 3. So if each care group can reduce the number of complaints to the minimum of at least 5 or 10, and that would bring us to the 50 target.
And that's the management of complaints.
That's the management, yeah.
And with the revisits, have we got any underlying causes of revisits? Are there any issues with complaints quality?
The revisits are mainly about families. They are those where we need to meet with them and speak to them. So it's the timings, and we keep revisiting.
Yeah, that's helpful. So we kind of go to the areas. So on the quality metrics, particularly VTE and fractured knot, we've talked before about trajectories, levels of confidence, and then sustainability. So how are we confident that the work we're doing is sustained? So the last time we had an update, I had a question about the role of CQI and transformation to see if there's anything we could put alongside the clinical teams to try and get a sustained improvement in both of those areas. Is that something that's being picked up?
So there is PMO support, there is, and I can't remember which report it's in now, there is discussion around they're currently working through things to develop a trajectory which is going to come back to there is this.
So my ask is slightly different, not PMO, so we'd heard a good update on CQI and NHS Impact and I can't remember, 14 colleagues trained in this area and 300, whether we're applying some of that resource, not PMO, into some of the transformation work for pathways and root cause. Is that happening?
So I can't speak for those 2 particular things. I spoke to Hayley and Tabitha about it, and it was the resource was sort of agreed for within that. So I don't know where it's exactly what says where.
To respond to, are we utilising that? We are scoping now out of the 300 who were trained, who are still within the organisation. Who are they? Where are they? And what skills do they need to get back? Because that resource has not been utilised. which is not a good thing.
It would just, for me, for the VTE and the fractured nerve, just looking for, are we deploying CQI transformation resource in the improvement space for those two programs? So if we haven't got it now, it's fine, but it could just to understand that, that's okay.
Just check, can you coming in on this point?
It was just particularly with VTE, just to highlight at the June Quality Committee. I know Amita in particular had done some really tenacious work behind this. To be really clear about having a VTE assessment is really important, but actually the ultimate aim is to prevent hospital-acquired thrombosis. So what actually is happening now, and will be routinely reported through to Quality Assurance Committee, is the numbers of hospital-acquired thrombosis that happen, that they're logged as a clinical incident, and that we're really clear that the appropriate prophylaxis was in place. And the next step then to make sure that that prophylaxis follows best practice guidance. So there's real clear wraparound to that, and also the update on the work that's underway to develop a transparent improvement trajectory for VT assessments. And the report and timeline on that is coming to the next Quality Assurance Committee. It's just that. I know that's not the CQI part of your question, but
so my last
for the other half.
If we've been a bit stuck, applying the same tenacity or hard work or PMO might not be the thing that moves this on. And my last question, Chair, if I can, was around finance. So Chris has just updated on a further stretch, not quite where we need to be after the first month or two, and an assessment of risk at Q1. I think as we push further, I think the establishment of the FSDG is a really good thing. I was at the first meeting, I was pleased to see how that was progressing. I think the fact that we've had to sharpen up our quality impact assessment processes as a board, I think with the risk assessment after that Q1 review, where do we think we're going to have to push for the latter 8 months? It'll be by the time we see the outputs of that and what risks does that present. So I just think, again, for the assurance committee, particularly quality, there's a good, for me, opportunity to look again about what we might need to be doing this last 8 months and getting that quality review that we've done.
Okay, a couple of questions from me then. Scott, you said the discharge process would go into F&P committee, is that right?
So I said the SNAP changes in process would go to either F&P or QAC, likely QAC, I think. I guess the amalgam of the discharge process work, and which would be the thing that informs the NMC2R trajectories, would go to F&P. Yeah.
So this request that F&P look at date lines as well, just to, so we have a sense of pace on it, really. And then my other question is to yourself, Tabitha. It's really good, the family and friends data that you presented. You also said that's taking away the ED bit. Are we not in danger of saying this looks really good because actually we're taking away the bit that doesn't make us that good? Or are we saying we're good on this bit, so what are we doing about the ED family and friends feedback?
We are actually looking at other ways of getting feedback from ED, because friends and family, by the time they have to go and feedback, they've either been in ED and gone. So Lynn and team are looking at how we can find a way of getting feedback from patients in ED.
It's not going to distort us into a more positive view across the trust. We're still going to have a focus on areas that.
Yeah.
So how will we know that? How will we know that the ED family and friends feedback is having an impact?
Because our figures at the moment it's 84. Sorry, my laptop has decided to go. Without looking, I think we are on 83.46. So we will know by the measures in terms of the responses we get.
For the general family and friends, that is, isn't it? What about the ED family and friends? If we're doing a new process, how will we know?
I'll have to update you on that one in terms of how we're recording it and BI picking the information. So I'll have to bring that back to you.
We go through quality.
It would, yeah.
I just want to make sure that when we get the bi-monthly report, we're not distorting it. You know, like Scott's thing now, we point out the RLI figures.
Yeah.
It's different to the Barrow when we look at ED.
So I'll have discussions with BI.
Thank you. Any other questions, colleagues? No? Are we happy then to note for assurance integrated report for April? Yeah, and acknowledge the actions being taken. Okay. Conscious of time, and I know we're heading towards a break, so we've got the minutes of the 3A reports. There are some recommendations to the boards from these, so we'll take them as they come up. Start with the audit committee.
Thanks, Chair. So we've got the 16th of May, the 26th of June. I'll take them as one. It's that time of year with a whole range of reports, assessments, and I'll pick out the internal audit opinion was that we have substantial assurance about the processes, the methodologies that we have in terms of the trust. I think in broad terms, I'm not going to go through them all, apart from thanking partners and the officers of the trust, because there's a lot of work going on at this time of year. I think the committee was assured that the trust has systems in place to support the trust policies, aims and objectives, whilst making the best use of public funds and assets. So from our perspective, those notes pick it up. The only other thing, which is a segue into the next item, as part of the committee's responsibilities, we sign off the self-assessment in terms of declaration. So all NHS are required to do this in terms of their provider licence. So we went through with that. One or two amendments were made, but I think that's the next item on the agenda for the sign off to be approved.
We'll take it now if that's okay. So
Yeah. That's me finished.
the NHS England submission of the annual self-declaration has gone through audit. The recommendation, you also approved of the chief exec and the chair to sign the statements on behalf of the board and submit them to NHS England. So the recommendation is the board is asked to approve the proposed self-certification.
Yeah.
And also authorise the chief exec myself to sign the statements on behalf of the board and submit to NHS.
Yeah.
Thank you.
That's it. Thank you.
People committee, who will update us on people? Karen?
Yes, yeah, thank you. If I can focus on the 3H report from the most recent one from the 24th of June and just highlight in particular the alert there. We received the first annual report from Medical and Dental Education Department. It's a really excellent report and really succinctly presented. There was a great deal of assurance about the governance, the systems, the processes, the leadership, and the committee was very much assured by that. But we were alerted to concerns just regarding the increasing workload that's linked to medical education, particularly the anticipated additional learners, introduction of medical apprentices, new roles, and also in that connection, just the suitability, particularly of the MES facilities at FGH. So just a couple of highlights there, and with that in mind, we agreed that a wider report will come back to the committee in October, and that will focus particularly on the expansion plans for the medical workforce, the implications of that, and our ability organisationally to support and sustain that. And then just a couple of other items to highlight. The too hot to handle report is coming later in the agenda, but the committee particularly are looking for a progress report on that in December. We noted as well and approved changes to the people services section of the IPR, which made me felt that was a lot clearer. And we'll take some further proposed changes going forwards. And just to note that we agreed as a Quality Assurance Committee and a People Committee that the freedom to speak up reporting will come to both. And although we recognise that the importance of the freedom to speak up, Nigel's report being fundamentally focused on patient safety, what that's highlighting at the moment is a number of people related issues. So we need to make sure that that's fed appropriately through the People Committee. So it's just to assure the board that that's not a duplication. It's a different, it's different. The people strategy is on track for launch in subject to board approval. And all of the work going on behind that. And we were assured, Ali mentioned earlier, particularly about the the operation of the pay control.
Thank you. Nothing to escalate to us then.
Nothing other than the alert about medical education.
Thank you. Got that. Okay, happy to accept people committee minutes. Finance and performance then, I had an email them in saying you would present this, Tony.
Yes, thank you very much, Chair. So for the finance performance, 3 meetings and 27th of June, I'm going to again just wrap them all up. The good news is a lot of triangulation between what Scott and Chris have said, so no surprises there. We did have a meeting in July, so we know obviously the more current position around the SIP target that was referenced earlier in light of delivery. So there's a bit of tracking under plan, but I'm not saying more than that. That will come to July's notes. The one thing I will flag up is the committee in May looked at the business case for the LSC surgical hub, and we basically approved it. Final approval on the 3rd of July, so that's been done. So that's the next item.
That's the finance committee approved option 4 about the recommendations for the full business case option 4. Yep, happy with it. Yeah, great. Tony, thank you.
Yeah.
Moving to quality committee then.
Thank you. We're going to do a double header because of having 2 meetings. I'm going to come to Karen first, who did the most recent meeting.
Okay, thank you. Thanks, Sarah. The alert around fractured neck of femur we've already heard about today, and the committee will monitor that closely through monthly reports. VTE also, and the bereavement suite we've highlighted earlier in the meeting. Just with regard to the complaints and patient relations, the CQC must do recommendation. As a committee, we just approved an update to the CQC action plan because some of those actions, improvement actions, have now been superseded. So that was approved. We also, with a few requested amendments, approved the trust quality account for publication on behalf of the board. That's simply a timing issue in terms of when the meeting will occur. And then also just relating back particularly to Scott's point about not meeting criteria to reside, the committee took a first report about the roles of allied health professionals and healthcare scientists. It was really well received. We've asked for 6 monthly reports going forward, with 2 points in mind particularly. One is that becomes a really data-driven evidence report, so we can really see the quantitative picture more clearly. And secondly, that it also considers the AHP contribution to the trust challenges with not meeting criteria to reside, and that was specifically featuring in that report going forwards. I think those are the those are the key things to highlight.
Thanks, Karen. Thanks for chairing my absence. It's a very heavy agenda, so it's been great fun.
I know. I'm assuming. Yeah, I'm assuming that wasn't a deliberate.
No, they're always heavy agenda.
They are.
So I had 3 points I wanted to pull out from the 3H report, which relates to the May meeting. The first is around the patient safety incident response framework, and I've advised in my report that this is sitting on the risk register at a score of 20. That there's a risk to the trust's ability to effectively deliver and implement it. And that particularly relates to the current resourcing model for PSERV, which has gone through 2 business cases so far. There's also a challenge, which is that at the time of writing, no patient safety investigations had been completed, and 6 of those that have not been completed had exceeded the 6-month time frame outlined, which is expected via PSERV. And we've seen elsewhere in the papers there's a maternity PSERV investigation that dates from October, which hasn't been completed. So a business case is being developed to relook at the resourcing, and I'm just going to come to Talitha really briefly for any subsequent updates on PSERV, which I thought would be relevant to feed in, if that's okay.
That's fine, Sarah, but you've actually covered it. Yes, because we're revisiting business case, and then we'll update in terms of the workforce we've got within PSERV at the moment does not meet the requirements for PSERV. basically.
So it's coming back to qualities.
Yeah, there's companies, so we've got an update in August, so currently advising you that there's a risk around it, and then depending on how that progresses, maybe become an alert, but I know also it is being looked at, so we'll receive an update in August. The second thing I just wanted to update is that the Quality Committee in May received Maternity Incentive Scheme Year 6 update on Safety Action 4, which is to demonstrate an effective system of clinical workforce planning for neonatal nursing workforce, and that found that staffing levels are adequate at FGH, but currently they're not compliant at RLI, and to meet national standards will require a business case. We're assured that the action plan that's in place means that we will be compliant with Year 6 safety action, provided that that continues to progress over time ahead. But I did want to advise forward that a business case is required around that. And then the third thing I wanted to mention, which is really a triangulation, is that through 2 different committees, finance and performance and then quality, we've noted challenges around ophthalmology performance, which have been picked up through performance reviews. And to confirm that subsequent to quality committee, we've agreed this is being looked at by the care group, and that when that's ready, that will come back to quality assurance committee. But broadly, we contend that it's currently being looked at through the right lens, which is the care group looking at that in detail.
Just check with you, Jane, before I come to the recommendations on quality on paediatric audiology. Is there anything you want to say?
I wanted to just go back and ask something about the previous, but I can do it after you've finished.
Okay, thank you. I'll come back to you then. Okay. So we've also had a provision of paediatric audiology services. CQC recommended that their report was considered by the Board of Directors. Quality Committee was assured no harms had been identified within the Trust paediatric audiology services. A further assurance report would be presented to the committee 6 months' time. But you recommended that the Board of Directors has to be assured that UHMBT currently has identified no harms to our paediatric audiology patients.
Yes, that came to the in June.
And then there's a range of recommendations which the board have been asked to accept. I'll read them out. Audiology services to have a risk on the organisational risk register relating to potential harms due to quality issue in the provision of services to children, to a lack of IQIPS accreditation. Yeah, we're happy to accept these as we go along. Gap analysis using the UCAS template for audiology is carried out by the end of July and identified actions undertaken. Business case for the identification of the required resources to deliver IQIPS accreditation is undertaken, completed by the end of September. And that the provision of paediatric audiology services report to the Quality Assurance Committee on a biannual basis on progress related to any actions identified to reduce the risk to the children of Morgan Bay in the likelihood of suffering permanent hearing loss. No comma in that sentence. UHMB continues to engage with the LSE Paediatric Audiology and the National Improvement Programme. Yeah. The last one, reporting of quality in audiology services will continue in line with the Trust Quality Governance Framework within the care group quality meetings monthly, with any moderate and above harms being managed under the PSERB framework related to the issues that service. Happy to accept those? Okay. I'll end though then the 3A reports. They're all included as appendices. Then I'll take Jane and then I'll come to you.
And it's not something necessarily discussed here, but it just occurred to me with you discussing the medical education report, but also the report about the allied healthcare professionals. If we're doing a piece of work around the increase in medical license, do we do a separate piece, or is there already a piece around the because the resource for supervision and training of those is largely the same, isn't it? I just didn't want us to be in a silo with medical education.
Yes, so the report that's going to people committees around expansion generally around enhancement. That's what I wanted.
And that point exactly is also highlighted in the QAC minutes to actually bring those pieces of work together.
Thank you for that clarification. Chief Exec?
Yeah, Chair, sorry to bang on about the kind of that last piece that I've just written down, we're now expecting 3 further business case on IQIP's neonate research. That could be 6-7 figure sums coming through. We've locked budgets down. Chris gave an update to say we are tens of millions of pounds away from our target. So my ask is to make sure that as these progress, the QIA approach, just because it comes to a single assurance committee, that single assurance committee doesn't have the right then to approve financially. We're going to have to find a way of triangulating the risk assessments and getting a good position on it. I think execs have found themselves in a couple of uncomfortable spaces where things have gone through a committee, and because a committee said to deploy, it's cut across some of the other governance processes around management and business case check and challenge. So I think we've just got a bit of something to work through to make sure we don't find ourselves in that position. I know execs are cited on it and we'll get through that raised here.
Good point. Worth reminding ourselves that as a board as well, we have customer practice that very wary of accepting requests for resources that come through individual groups. They should normally come through the normal processes and through the execs. Then it comes through as an exec report for us to seek assurance on. Sarah?
Yeah, and I just wanted to clarify, it's more about advising that business cases come through. There's no sense for the quality assurance committee is interested in that. It's just advising that in order to be compliant, that'll be required.
So I think minute only that that also accepts the principles that if business cases are undertaken, they would require approval further on, in which case they may not be approved. Okay. Okay, thank you. Right, Transformation and Improvement Board, this is 13, 3 little dots. A report to provide an update from the Transformation and Improvement Board held on the 15th of May and 12th of June.
Thank you, Chair. We're in transition, so this will be a normal 3A's report at the next board meeting. Just a couple of quick highlights. No issues or concerns to escalate. Secondly, the terms of reference are here to sign off. The third point is probably more significant, which is under 15 at B. It says further work to be undertaken to ensure effective deployment of transformative work to ensure resources, capacity and sequencing of work streams within the trust and across the system is smartly deployed. And it kind of picks up the point the chief exec was making. There's a lot of moving pieces, and I suppose it's about that board having a kind of not control, but it's an oversight of what's going on, how. Because if you look at digital, depending on how you look at it, there's a regional initiative, there's local initiatives to improve systems and processes, but then there's a digital strategy. So it's how the capacity and how that reads across to the continuous quality strategy that Tariff touched upon at the early part of the meeting. So it's work in development and it's iterative. I think we'll find our way through it, but it's that kind of joining the dots up. That's the simplest way of putting it.
Then we've got a recommendation to the board that we're asked to receive and note the content of the report, but approve the terms of reference of preferred methodology. Sarah?
Thank you. I think just to say I really welcome this direction of travel and that we've now got Tony chairing. For a while we needed a bit more sight of this from a non-exec point of view. So my ask then of the terms of reference, if possible, is that it will be currently without a non-exec being at the meeting, but Tony is the chair. So is it possible that in Tony's absence another non-exec might attend, but it would be chaired still by the deputy chair?
We've adopted that practice. Great. Okay, thank you. Happy then, based on that addition, to accept the terms and approve the terms of reference, and preferred methodology. Thanks, colleagues. I make it just coming to 10 past 11. Should we reconvene in 20 past 11? Gives everybody a chance to have a break.